Hi everyone, my name is Anne-Flore Maman Lahofi. I'm very happy to present you today this presentation about the concept of desirability, but from a more touristic luxury perspective. Let's start with a simple definition, and even not the definition, but I would say the origin of the word desirable that maybe you don't know. Desirable comes from Latin desiderare. In desiderare, you have sideris. Sideris was the Latin word to designate a star, a constellation of stars, a planet. And actually, when you read the word desiderare in Latin, that means stop contemplating the stars. This being said, what is the takeaway from this definition is the fact that desire comes from the unfulfillment of something. So if you want to create desire in your clients, you need to understand what is unfulfilled. Let's have a look at another definition, one given by Aristotle. Aristotle, as you know, was a philosopher, so the approach is a little bit different. And he says that all men by nature desire to know. And indication of this is the delight we take in our senses, and above all others, the sense of sight. The reason is that this, so the sense of sight, most of all the senses, makes us know and brings to light many differences between things. What is the takeaway from that? Well, that desire comes from the lack of knowledge, and a knowledge which can be acquired thanks to your senses, and as Aristotle said, the sense of sight, so the delight of the eyes. Emotions coming from observation, which brings yourself to a new ideal state. Now, if you look at a dictionary, for example, the Oxford Dictionary of Synonym, you have desirable, which is synonym with preferable, jealousy, coquettish, my favorite, seductive, suitable, charming, glamorous, sensible, many things. And as you can see, you even have like sexually attractive. So here we have this notion of desire, which is very much related to the human emotions, also from a sexual, point of view. The fact that desire is something which is very much related to your sexual arousal, a perspective which has been also taken by psychoanalysts like Freud. Let's wrap it and let's see the real definition if you open a real dictionary. From the dictionary, desirable means worth wanting or having or seeking for by most people. The by most people is very important. It becomes desirable only if other people also want it. Sexually attractive, the Freudian definition of desire. Worthy of being chosen as a spouse. Maybe this is a little bit of oldish definition, but yet, why not? And wished for as being an attractive, useful, or necessary course of action. Meaning that it's about willing and doing. Desire is going to lead people towards action. You remember we start with an unfulfillment, and this is going to be filled thanks to an action driven by desire. Okay, now let's have a look at what desire would be from a more luxury tourism perspective. To explain that, I'm going to present you several studies that I have done for Serandipians among your community and with experts to try to decipher what would be the definition of desire, but also how we could elicit desire in our clients. So two objectives to our different studies. The first one is to understand how you guys, when I say you, I mean the community, the members and the partners of Serandipians, so how you tell a story about an experience to make your brand desirable. We speak of branding in this conference, so how do you make your brand desirable? Second objective of our studies was to identify in luxury tourism the key success factors to elicit desire, because it's not enough to know what it is, we need to understand how we can trigger it. To do that, we did two extensive studies, not at the same time, by the way, but we did two extensive studies with a cross-cultural approach, meaning that there was the deliberate choice of including in the studies people from all around the world. So the idea was to try to seek for commonalities between cultures and not differences between them. And we used a scientific method and rigor, as you may know, or as you may have read on the first slide of this presentation. I am also an academic researcher. I have a PhD, so I took the approach as an academic researcher would take, for publication of an academic paper. The first story was about you telling your story about desirability. So we checked what we call brand storytelling. This is our first study. This first study was actually a study that I conducted on my own based on the data that you produced in 2020. Maybe you remember this year of the pandemic when the first Marbella event was cancelled. We had a virtual conference, and I presented during this virtual conference the result of a contest that some of you took part to. You had to submit a brand storytelling based on some indications I gave you previously. And then I took again, so we had 32 stories from members and partners of Serandipian, and I took 32 stories, brand storytelling that you produced, and I analyzed them using what we call semiotics. So semiotics, just to let you know, is a discipline which is here to help us understand how you build meaning in a story. So I analyzed your storytelling and I tried to understand through your storytellings, how do you perceive your brand as something, an entity which might be desirable, and how do you communicate about that in a story which is told about the brand. What is the result? Well, the result is something first that I presented in an academic conference in Barcelona in last December. So it has been published as an academic paper, and we had very positive feedback about this research. The community was really interested in it. So this conference is about place branding. So only people who study nation branding, country branding, city branding, and they were really amazed by the quality of production of the storytelling that you did. So again, congratulations. I already said that 2 years ago, but you did really a good job on your storytelling overall. So speaking about desire, when you speak about desire, what do you say? First of all, well, the object of desire in your stories is mostly rational. You remember I said that desire should also get a component very emotional. Okay, so in your case, you pointed more on the rational aspects of desire. The second big takeaway from your stories is that for some reason, your hero in the story, so the projection of your client, is suddenly alone. As if to reach, the fulfillment of desire, to reach an emotional state, we needed to be alone. That came to a surprise to me because speaking with you, you were always like, we build family-oriented experiences, some things to be lived with other people. So it came to me as a surprise that in your story, you actually present the hero as a lonely hero. Third big takeaway, there is little room for emotions in your stories. Again, it's very rational, not only for the object of the desire, but even in the story which is said, there is little room for emotions in the way you express things. And last but not least, the focus is on male clients. It's like your lonely hero is a man. So from how can we put that? From an inclusive perspective, I would say that right now you're not there yet because you tell your stories about a lonely man who aims at gaining something very rational. So, well, the conclusion from the analysis of your brand storytelling is that even though from a story perspective they are very interesting and very well crafted, probably there is room of improvement about how to tell, to convey, emotions, and maybe to be a little bit more inclusive in terms of client targeting or client projection than what you have presented 2 years ago. But maybe that was 2 years ago, and maybe if I ask you to redo it, you would do it a little bit differently. Let's talk now about the second study. The second study is a very big study that we launched with Cantine, roughly, I would say, last September. So it's a very, very big study which is composed of actually 3, I would say, sub-studies to some extent. The second study starts with a very scientific approach. So I went into trying to understand how the concept of desire is defined in the literature. I remind you, our objective with study number 2 is to try to define desirability in luxury tourism. What do we call literature review? Literature review is when you go through academic research done by researchers in past years, who have already worked on a topic which is the same topic or close to this one. So I went into reviewing what people had defined about desire. Many things have been published, of course, on desire in communication, desire in marketing, desire from a psychological perspective, from a sociological perspective, anthropological perspective even. But guess what, guys? Nothing in tourism. There is no single study before this one which is trying to understand or to define desire in luxury tourism. So at least we have, an interest in doing it. From the literature, I built some, even though they were not in luxury tourism, I remind you, I took some definitions and I draw a list of possible adjectives, synonyms, proposals about what desire could be in luxury tourism. Coming from non-luxury tourism, I took, other definitions to understand how they could be transferred in luxury tourism. And I submitted all those proposals, those statements, to you, the travel designers community. So we launched a survey, maybe you remember, you took part to it largely, and I want to thank you because it's great to have, a large sample of respondents for such study. We actually had 286 Serandipians travel designers who replied to the survey and who told me basically that this definition is okay, not okay, and who made also qualitative proposals like new potential, adjectives or definitions of desire for them in luxury tourism. From there, I had a focus group. I organized a focus group with the Luxury Travel Lab. You know that the Luxury Travel Lab is an emanation from Serandipians, created by Quentin Desurmont. And we have these groups of experts in the luxury industry, not in tourism, but in luxury, who debate and who reflect upon topics. So we gathered all together. If I remember correctly, it was in October or November. And I organized a focus group, which I moderated, to try to understand what would be their input about desire in luxury. Okay, and many good insights came out from this focus group. So it's qualitative data in this case. From the quantitative data of your survey and the qualitative data of the focus group, I built a series of new statements. To be clear, 55 statements to design what we call a Delphi study. So a Delphi study, if you are here with Serandipians, if you're not new with Serandipians, you already know what it is because this is already the methodology that we chose to define the concept of haute villégiature a couple of years ago. Just to remind you very briefly, a Delphi study is when you seek for the definition of a new concept listening to experts. Okay, and those experts are going to be presented with a series of statements. They never speak to one another, and they are going to say how much they agree, disagree on each statement. And then we keep going on until they agree on which statements are the correct ones. So it took us a while for this one. It took us 6 rounds, okay, to do it. But we managed, out of the 55 statements, to get a consensus on some big statements I'm going to show you just after. 20 experts took part to this study. What is the takeaway from that? And what is the definition of luxury tourism desirability? It is an art of seduction. We go back to the sexually definition, guys, the emotional one. An art of seduction which can be defined through different components. First of all, to get desirability in luxury tourism, we need to have brand awareness, meaning that having a strong brand name, a strong brand reputation as an agent, as a travel designer, as a luxury hotel, whoever you are, is compulsory if you want to elicit desire. Working on your brand is fundamental. Second key takeaway, desirability in luxury tourism comes from the notion of exclusivity, which means that only something which is not affordable for everyone is desirable. Not affordable doesn't mean that it is super expensive. It just means that there is some kind of effort to get it and that it's not easy to grasp. Remember, Sideris, the star, the constellation of stars, the planet. Okay, contemplating the star. Reaching the star is not easy. Same thing in luxury tourism. Reaching desirability is something which should be an uneasy process to some extent. Third component of luxury desirability, the notion of fit, meaning that you will manage to elicit desire only if you leverage your clients' interests and habits. Meaning that you have to know your clients' interests and habits, of course. And the last component to eliciting desirability in luxury tourism is playing on emotions. How do you do that? Leveraging your clients' patience. Building up emotions is fundamental. To wrap up, if you want to elicit desire in luxury tourism, you need to have a strong brand, to propose exclusive experiences in an exclusive way to exclusive people, who you know very much from their interest and habit perspective. And of course, you need to play on their emotions. And how do you do that? Playing or using their patience. To conclude, I would like to close this presentation on a quote from a painter, Frida Kahlo, which is "Nothing is desirable until we choose to desire it." Frida Kahlo, this painter, is someone who says basically that your client is only going to desire something in luxury tourism if he is convinced that he has to desire it. So there is some kind of emotional argumentation to be made with your client. Before I close, I would like to express our gratitude to the professionals of the luxury travel industry who took part in the scientific research: hotels, consulting companies, DMCs, travel designers, private yachting companies, and private aviation companies. It is thanks to them that we were able to conduct this study, and it was an uneasy and fast process to do, including during Christmas time, so thank you so much for your participation. So guys, know that you know what to do. It is your turn to build desires through strong brands and emotions. Thank you for your attention.